Hi Swim England, welcome back to our past and present series. Tonight we're talking about water polo, and tonight we're joined by Sean King and Elliot McHugh. Sean is our coach lead on the water polo leadership group and played for Great Britain back in 2012 in the London Olympics. And Elliot is relatively new to water polo and was looking forward to his under 19 GB cap this year, but through the current situation, that's been postponed. Elliot, and also part of his part-time role for swimming and aquatics and water polo specifically, as part of, has got himself on the Vice Youth panel. So, gents, thanks very much for joining us tonight. As per normal, I'm going to disappear off of this call, but I'm going to leave you to talk water polo, the current situation, how it was back in the day, what you're looking forward to in the future. And for our audience, just to really get a feel for your sport, your passion, how you're passionate about it, and all good things that relate to it. So thanks very much for joining us. I'll come on towards the back end of this call, but otherwise I'll leave you to talk your sport through. Thanks very much,
Thanks,
gents.
Ron. Thank you. I'll kick things off then, Elliot. So hi, Elliot. First and foremost, we're obviously both in London, but quite a big distance apart in London, or certainly as far as you can get. I guess how are you finding this period? Grant touched on the fact that unfortunately your chance to compete, if you like, as for Great Britain was lost as a result of what we find ourselves in. So how are things going?
Yeah, lockdown was very tough at the start actually, because pools sort of shut very suddenly, and then quite soon after that, our Europeans were cancelled. So I have to say I was kind of in a bit of a low place. But as time went on, I've been sort of trying to cope by doing different things and trying to focus on like what I can sort of do. I feel that you got to focus in a way on what you can change. Europeans being cancelled, lockdown, it's all sort of out of your control. So I think it's important to focus on what you can do. I've been working on my kind of flexibility, doing quite a lot of body weight training and things. So yeah, it was a bit tough at the start, but I'm getting used to things. What about you? How are you coping with it all?
I mean, look, I'm in a very different stage of my playing career, if you like, to yourself. So I sort of stopped playing for the national team in 2014, and so other than playing, I guess it's not social polo because I still play National League and I play London League, obviously. But for me, I've missed it. I have to say I've missed it. Even the less that I do now compared to what I once did. But I mean, I'm by trade, obviously I'm a teacher. So we've been teaching remotely during this period over things like Zoom. So it's certainly not been busy. I've certainly had things to do, and along with taking this role as on the leadership group, I've been able to do quite a fair bit with the sport. But just like you, Bud, I'm now desperate. I'm really looking forward to that first opportunity to get back in the pool, and hopefully it's not too long now. If I touch on just one thing you said as well before we move on, interestingly, I was talking to the kids at school who very similar in your response in that initially it was tough, and now I've come to terms with it and I'm trying to make the best of it as I can. I keep coming back to the fact that you think how many Olympians or people that would have perhaps been going to Tokyo in a matter of weeks now, where that postponement could really affect their possibility of competing. So there's so many people in a similar situation, and I guess maybe one thing for you is that it would be very disappointing if you weren't able to compete, but there is time, and there is a senior program, and there is hopefully a university games that you can be involved in. So there is something you can certainly redirect your focus onto.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of lucky in a way that I'm not so much dependent on water polo as my career. I wasn't training for something as big as the Olympics. Obviously, it's still very disappointing to have Europeans cancelled. But I think you just gotta, it's just out of your control. It's something that you can't change. There's talks that it could potentially happen next year, with where we play, because obviously we'll be out of the under-19 age bracket.
Yeah.
So it's all a bit uncertain at the moment, but it's tough for everyone in our squad at the moment. And yeah, I think just trying to stay focused on doing things like reading. I've been spending more time with my family as well, and paying attention to just little things like flexibility and things like reactions as a goalie, and that kind of, it makes you almost forget about the situation in a way. So that's how I've been coping mainly.
I guess maybe it'd be good now to sort of talk about how we got into the sport. Like we're both London boys, if you like, and I've already stressed that we're quite far apart in that. Okay, we live in London, but we're probably quite a way away from each other. How did you get into polo?
So actually, interestingly, I got into it at school, and I didn't actually come from a swimming background at all. I didn't come even from a football goalkeeping background, because obviously I'm a goalkeeper in water polo. And I got into it at school, actually. My friend played it, he's Spanish, and he just kind of got me into it. And I was training with them. I played at school level, which obviously it's in London, it's a relatively low level compared to the other levels that you can play at in the country. But it was a really enjoyable thing for me, and I just kind of I stuck at it. I have to say it was very tough at the start, just because it just all felt very new. But I think as I improved more and more each time, because I really kind of dedicated myself to the training, and each time I improved, it kind of gave me a lot of satisfaction. And I moved on to club level, then regional level, doing the kind of national academies, regional academies, and then obviously I went on to the national team sort of pathway. But it was a long journey for me. I only started playing must have been 4.5 years ago. 4.5 years. And I think
which is quite late, really. Yeah, when you're as in, so what, sort of 13, 14?
Yeah, about 14. Yeah, because I was starting my GCSE sort of course at the time, and it was I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the game, and I think if you have a passion for the sport and if you work really hard, I mean, I really tried. Like, I was in the water in the evenings all the time. I was trying to go into all the club sessions I could at the time. I was at Ealing with my coach Petter. And he also came. It wasn't just me as well. It was also other people who helped me with drills and things. Even people like Matt Holland, who you played with in the 2012 Olympics.
Yeah, since the age of 11. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, since the age of 11. Yeah. He's been really good for me in just helping me. I go over to Stratford on Tuesdays and Crystal Palace on Fridays.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a trek, but he's also been a really key or sort of fundamental person in helping me with water polo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely look up to him as a goalie, and I'm really thankful for him. And what about yourself? How did you sort of get involved? You say you played since 11?
Yeah, so actually the same as you, Elliot. So we, I went to the school that I now work at, and I did come from a swimming background, but I was a swimmer of no note. I wasn't a great swimmer. I was an okay club swimmer, and I certainly didn't. I did never see myself being a top swimmer. It was something that I did from a very young age, and I enjoyed. My biggest passion was football, so I was football, and even up to about the age of 14, football was still my main sport, if you like. So yeah, I started when I was 11 at school, and then it went from there, really. Actually, the guy that introduced me to the sport, we work together now at school. So if you like, I'm his replacement, but he still supports me with coaching the guys at school, which is really nice. And similar to you, obviously back then it was slightly different, you know. So we had, well, the NAGs were called the ASAs, and they were full games. So first, all the way, I know now that in some age groups you only play full games in the finals. And the interregionals was we played as the South, so it was a massive area that covered. It wasn't broken up like it is now as much. So you had the North, you had the South. You didn't have North East, Northwest. You just had a North. So it was much fewer teams. Scotland used to compete as well. So I went a similar sort of route to you, but obviously in a slightly different format. And then again, because of the generation I was born, I was fortunate that I was in a time when we got that Olympic bid. So actually, my first representation for the national team was when we'd found out we'd won the bid. We were in Malta on about the fourth day of the camp. It was announced that London was going to host 2012. So, and I'll never forget that the performance director at the time was with us and coaching us, and he said that he felt that the bulk of the team that would play in 2012 would be made up of my age group, which proved to be the case. So I was very fortunate, and you mentioned already about the obviously that we had an Olympics, you know. So from the age of about 16, we knew that London was going to be hosting. Okay, we didn't know for sure that we would be involved, and that was yes and no for a period. But that's sort of where it all happened. But as I say, I sort of, as you were just starting, which is really impressive that the level you've got to so quickly, particularly for a goalkeeper, because you wouldn't find me anywhere near goalkeeping in anything other than five lives. I sort of joined the national team at the age you started, so that really shows just how impressive, how far you've come in such short a space of time. And I think that's real credit to obviously how hard you work as well. And I'm obviously chuffed to hear that my good friend Matty Holland is
he's good.
involved, and he's been good for you. And I've got a goalkeeper myself at school that Matt is working with, and he's done a lot of good there as well. So it's great. It's great that some of the guys, obviously from my time and before, are giving a bit back to the sport. So obviously you've only been involved for a short period, you know, but covered a lot of distance in that period. Are there any standout moments? Are there any bits where you're particularly like perhaps your best achievement or performance in that 4 and a bit years?
I think my one of my sort of biggest memories, if you like, it was kind of my first international cap, which actually wasn't that long ago. This is before GB under 19s, and it was the England schools. So it was a tournament, and Australia was coming over to do a sort of tour.
Yeah.
And that squad, which was led by Dean, so that was pretty much the sort of top 13 players in England at the time. It meant quite a lot for me just to make that team. I remember playing the last couple of quarters, and I was pretty nervous, but it went well. But even some of my best memories have actually also been outside the water. Just sharing experiences with your teammates, going abroad, seeing different parts of the world. Like I've been to lots of different places. One of my favorites actually was going to Serbia. Like a friend of my club got me to go out to a camp over there for about 17 days, which was a big sort of part of my career so far. We were training with kind of Olympic medalists. I remember the Serbian national team goalie came down and sort of did some stuff with me, and they won gold in Rio. So it's just the sport has given me so much in that I've been able to share great experiences with teammates, and also just seen the world, and like been playing outdoors at the pool in Barcelona and Croatia. The pools there just amazing, playing outdoors. So although water polo is like a small sport, it can give you so much. And I think, they're sort of my standout moments really. And obviously making the GB under 19 team was the kind of the biggest thing for me, because it meant so much to me to just make that team of players. and hopefully go to Europeans. But unfortunately, that looks like it might not be happening. But we're still holding out hopes. So
yeah.
yeah.
I think I was talking to somebody else actually the other day about our sport. You mentioned it is a small sport, but obviously very big in large parts of Eastern Europe. But someone said to me, why do you think polo people stay in the sport for so long? And I think that one of the things where our sport is largely amateur, you play it because you love it, you know. And I couldn't agree more on where you say about sort of what it gives you, you know, just playing polo. Like for sure, my job is largely down to my career in sport, not my paperwork, if you follow where I'm going. So it's helped me in my career, but also the fact that there's very few countries where I don't know somebody, you know, and I don't, or I've not been, or I've not seen stuff that, you know, you wouldn't ordinarily go and see. Like you mentioned Serbia, obviously Serbia's great. It's not a place where most people have probably been, you know, and places like Montenegro, okay, they're becoming more popular, but I think we get to see a lot of the parts of the world. I mean, I always remember going to Ljubljana in Slovenia for a junior European qualification tournament. Absolutely beautiful, you know, and some of the places we've been have just been. I mean, we went with the national team. We once went to Greece and we trained under the Acropolis in the open airport, and that was just absolutely incredible. So I think it's one of the real great bits and why people stay in our sport for so long, you know, is because you play it because you love it, and also people tend to be friendly all over the world, you know. In the sport, I'd liken it to rugby quite a lot. I think it's a very similar sort of culture to rugby, that it's very social outside of the pool, and you make good friendships that you hold forever. And those guys that you know in Serbia, you'll probably still know them, and you'll be in touch with them for most likely the rest of your life. And I think that's a real strength of our sport.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, you played professionally in Spain and Germany, didn't you? And
Yeah,
how
so
did you lead up to the Olympics?
yeah, so in the lead up to the Olympics, I was in Germany for 2 years. So we were in a centralised programme in Manchester. So all of the national team were in Manchester for a period, and then it was decided for a variety of different reasons that we would go abroad, or those of us that were able to would go abroad. And so I came to the end of my my degree. So I finished my degree in 2010, and essentially we spent from January till the summer trialing in 2010. So I went to Szentes in Hungary. I went to Rapid Bucharest. I think there was a Dutch club. So Australia, there was all these possibilities, but none of them had really come off. I was offered a deal in Szentes, and then there was a change of the management of the group. Myself and Craig Figes were offered an opportunity to go there. Rapid Bucharest guys ended up going, but for whatever reason I didn't. And then actually my best friend not just in the sport, but my best friend Jack Waller, who I'm sure you know as well, and we play together and have done for a very long time. Jack had been asked to go to Germany essentially, and the German club had asked if there was anybody else that wanted to go with him, literally. So they signed Jack on what they'd seen and signed me as Jack's mate. So it's a sort of a strange way for it to happen. I'd learnt German at school, so I had a sort of, I guess, a pidgin German understanding to go with. But you know, and when I think about Germany, it was an incredible experience. It was, I refer to it a bit like an apprenticeship, but in polo terms, I had very much free reign. So I was one of the main. What's the best word? I was a main player for the team. So a lot of what we did in attack went through me. I played full games. You know, with my actual game IQ, it developed, but not to the level it developed when I went to Spain. So it was a much more tactical game in Germany than we experience in this country. So everybody was far more tactical in what they did, and it was a lot more organised, very physical, very physical league, and you never won away from home. So away games it was almost impossible to win away from home.
Yeah.
And as I touched on, then when I had the opportunity after 2012 to go to Spain, and I thought I knew our game, I thought I had a pretty good grasp of how the game's played. And then actually it was one person. So I played with Andre Josep, who all water polo people would know. He's a legend of our game, and he was obviously coming towards the end of his career and played a large part in me going to Spain. It was him who I dealt with to go to Navarra. He changed my whole perception of our game, you know, and he obviously Romanian, but was sort of schooled in Italy and Croatia, so had that blend of the way the game's played, and that completely changed my perception of the biggest influence on now as a coach was what I learned in that time in Spain about just the level of detail, you know, with, for example, a lot of English clubs like to play left zone, you know, or left hand drop, whatever you call it, you know, just the detail it went into of what everybody's responsibility was within that was what blew me away. You know, you'd often talk to I know you're a goalie, and this is probably above you as a goalie. I'm joking, of course, but you'd talk about, as a blocker in the left hand zone, you talk about their movement. You wouldn't be talking about what the rest of the defence are doing. You know, they'd be probably having a chat. You know, it was all about your positioning and stuff like that. So that was an incredible experience, and certainly after 2012 played my best water polo, I think, in Spain. So it was fantastic. And again, is that something you thought about, Elliot, about going to play abroad?
So I did think about possibly going, because when I went out to Serbia, there was obviously opportunity there. There was an opportunity to kind of do a setup over there, play at club level there, but it was just a bit difficult because I had kind of school as well to be dealing with, and I had obviously visions of competing in the Europeans this year, so that meant having to be close to home to be with the guys, with the team, and then moving on to university the year after. So it crossed my mind, but I never really kind of got round to it. And as you say, it'd be great I think a really good way to improve is just being around. Even in the 17 days that I was in Serbia, I just learned so much. The speed of the play, the way they faked, the way the players, you know, the physicality of the game, was so different. And I think when you're around that, probably like you were in Spain and Germany and everywhere, it really has a positive impact on the way you play.
Well, I think it raises your level. You know, I think you have a small adjustment time where you're a little bit lost. You know, and I've been there where you sort of, I guess in your case, I guess in your case, it's you don't touch many balls for a couple of sessions. That. You know, and I mean, like, look, I'll give you an example of that, exactly that. So when I went to Spain, it was all very last minute when I went to Spain because we weren't sure what we were going to do. I was talking to a Croatian club, but nothing was really. I was actually in Florida when the Spanish club contacted me on holiday, and it all went really quickly. I sort of flew home from Florida. I was out and I was playing my first game within 3 weeks. My first session, I didn't know anything about my coach, and you probably familiar who my coach was. He makes all the videos, the El Cuervo videos. So some of the videos on YouTube with the crow was my coach in Spain, a guy called Manuel Silvestre. And I didn't know anything about him other than that he was a bit crazy, and he made these funny videos with dodgy soundtracks. And I arrived, and I mean, look, he won silver in Barcelona as a goalkeeper. He won 200 odd caps as a goalkeeper for Spain. When I arrived, big guy, really big guy, didn't look like he'd ever competed really. And in my first session, him and Andre took me in the pool, and I was obviously I was still in good shape. You know, we'd just come off the back of 2012. I was still very fit. I was still very. I was able. I was in competition. I was fit, you know. And he was, oh yeah, I'll go in goal. And he was wearing these board shorts, like big baggy board shorts, like you'd wear when you're surfing. And he was like, I'll go in goal. I'll go in goal. Our goalkeeper can't come. Our goalkeeper can't come. So I was shooting with Andre, and I've had about 7 shots, Elliot, and I haven't scored. And it's getting to a point where he's sort of going, yeah, or yeah, I know where that's going. Yeah, I'm just reading it.
Yeah.
And obviously the big joke at the end of the session, he stopped me and he was like, "Did you know what? You got a really, really good shot." And I thought this bloke's just taking the mickey. Like, I haven't scored for 25 minutes. And then obviously we went for food, and then it was like, oh well, he played for Spain for however many games. He won the Spanish league. I mean, this guy was a legend. And that was that moment, you know, where I felt like, what have I got myself into? Like, I need to step up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So we've touched a little bit on, well, I guess we're not really, but sort of training environment. You mentioned obviously your time in Serbia. Were we in some form of normality? How often are you able to train? What does that look like? What's it made up of?
Yeah, so obviously pre-COVID, I was training about 5 times a week, and then I'd have sometimes games on the weekend, obviously National League. And then I do LAN sessions where I could, like obviously fitting in between school, mainly at the weekend. But obviously, because it wasn't practical to have polo training in the morning, like with school. That meant that every session in the evening, you had to kind of give 101%. Like I used to kind of design my own leg sets and, you know, really push myself, because like if I missed a session or I didn't really try that hard or whatever the reason was that I was ill, I just kind of feel bad. So I did put quite a lot of pressure on myself in the time since I started to really try and improve every time.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I kind of improved in a quick space of time, if you know what I mean. And I guess, yeah, I was training with Matt on Tuesdays and Fridays, which really helped. And each session was about 2 hours during the week. So yeah, training was quite intense. I tried to mix in legs with, because as a goalie, it's really important to have like strong legs. And
it's very different to an outfield player. I think it's a polar opposite in the way you train, you know, and the sort of position you need to be strong in as well, you know. I mean, when I think back, again, going back to when I was at your sort of age, obviously the one of the difficulties we have, you mentioned about some of the pools in Barcelona and Croatia, you know, they're available all the time. And in most cases, the kids are able to train in the morning, as you touched on. We're at school, so that's not possible. So I remember being your age and playing. I just played from a very young age. I was playing men's polo, and I was sometimes going from game to game. So I played for the juniors at St Paul's School on a Sunday afternoon, and then I'd play for the seniors at Gurnell in a pool you probably know really well from your Ealing days. So I remember just having to try and play loads of games. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, is that when it comes to comparing ourselves to our, not even our nearest rivals, but the top nations, we can't afford to lose any time. You know, whenever we are in the pool, as you quite rightly say, we have to maximise what we get done, because we know we're already hours behind them each week. So yeah, it's one of those things. And I guess if I go back to when I was playing abroad, and I mean, the fact that we used to train twice every day, you know, and I mean, I was able to play, I was able to earn from what I loved, you know, I was doing something I loved, which is an amazing thing. But I was able to train twice a day. We were able to go to the gym whenever we liked, really. You know, we'd play on a Saturday, and I think that's the key thing, and that's the thing I think for all young players in this country is, if you really love it and they've got the aspirations like you have, you know, to play for the national team, and you do have to make sure you maximize. And I love where you say about designing your own leg sets, you know, because the classic session in this country is Elliot, get in, and we're going to shoot at you for an hour. So And I'm sure you've had that. I'm sure you've had players saying, "Elliot, I want to shoot." So that's really good.
Yeah, no, as a goalie, I kind of have to. It's almost, I wouldn't say lonely, but I kind of take myself out of the session a little bit and just try and take my corner of the pool and just try and do in my local training session, like do my leg sets, do kind of emptying the jugs and things like that. And I'd really try and plan it out, because I think when you have like a goal, it's like my goal was to make the under-19 team. I think it's really important to have a kind of structure. Like I really put everything together. I would have my leg sets kind of laid out, and I'd put on stuff that was being used in Serbia, and the drills that I'd learned, and I just bring them back here. And I'd think to myself, well, yeah, they might be in the water, twice a day in the morning, but if I give 200% in the evening, then I might not be the same level in the end, but because they're playing at such a high level, but I'm going to improve at a really fast rate.
Yeah.
Training was for me was about kind of giving the best. Obviously there's times for fun. Like, you do want to enjoy the sport, and not everyone wants to go on to play for the national team. I think water polo can also be a social thing for some people, especially at school. They just want to, it's about learning to swim and get in the water and things like that, which is really important. And I think, yeah, for me, it was slightly different. I always had the vision of trying to make the national team, and that's just something that I wanted. And it's really actually taught me a lot in terms of psychology as well. Just kind of going into my older years now, I always kind of have that mentality in a way. So yeah, that was sort of training for me.
I guess my next question then is what's been your influence? You've mentioned Matty Holland and the impact he's had. Has there been anybody else that sort of really played a part in not only your ambition and what you want to achieve, but helping you to try and achieve that?
Yeah, I think I say probably, yeah, my biggest is Matt Holland. I think, just having someone, there was a lot of people there that I was so grateful, actually. It's another thing with the water polo community, and that just having people there to talk to and guide you in a sense. Like there's, Tom Wall from sort of Nottingham area.
Hucknall, yeah.
Yeah, I can reach out to him by text, and he was part of our sort of setup in helping. There's my coach Petter abroad. He's working in America, and he's given me kind of sessions from the university he's at there. Matt Holland, yeah, and just having people there to kind of guide you and take you on the track. Obviously, if you're willing to reach out to the people. I mean, I remember my first session at Ealing, and not first session actually. We played a game against Sutton, and Matt was there, and he obviously didn't know who I was, so I kind of reached out and said, would I be able to take your phone number so I can, ask you some questions if I ever have questions. And I was really grateful these people were there to help me and give me tips. That really made a difference for me in helping me improve. So it was a combination of people, I think, that really was my influence in the I played. And what about you? Who was your kind of influence that over all the years you've been playing a long time?
I think that perhaps one of the biggest influences for me was Craig Figes. So when I went into the national team, I think I made my international debut at 16, 17. And look, I think Craig is a name that everybody in the sport knows, and arguably probably one of the best British players ever, if not the best, and was the captain when I came into that setup. And I mean, I'm sure you've played against Craig. Technically perfect, always scores 2 or 3 goals a game, always just and the biggest thing, just a really good guy, just a really good bloke. And I think I hope you don't experience this. I hope it's an easier transition, but I found moving from junior to senior level, having been a good junior player, to then moving up to senior level, where it is just, there's no room for error, particularly at the time we were playing like Hungary, Montenegro, remain. You know, we were playing nations that there is no room for error. I found that transition really hard, and whether deliberately or not, Craig was not just somebody I looked up to, but he was just so good to us as juniors. And I guess the other person that I'd couple with that is Tom Kerwin, who is somebody I have an enormous amount of time for. He, in similar ways, I think initially there was a distance between us as juniors and seniors, but Tom was somebody else that, and different to Craig in some ways, but somebody else that really was somebody I looked up to and really sort of made an effort to help me as a player. So I guess they'd be the two guys that I would say most of all played a big part. I was fortunate as well, I guess, coaching wise, and he's not on the circuit as much, but I had Jim Caulfield as a coach for 2 years when I was at Grantham College for sixth form, and I remember spending sort of 6 months throwing the ball at floats on the wall and trying to knock floats over, and thinking to myself, like, what am I doing? I just want to shoot at a goalkeeper. But the work he did on my technique, it gave me a foundation that then meant I could do things around it, you know. So I had a really strong foundation technically, which I was then able to develop and shoot off balance and bits and bobs like that. And Jim, in coaching terms, what Jim did for me as a player in that sort of 2 years was just fantastic. And to this day, because Jim was known to be very passionate, is how I'll put it. I don't think he ever shouted at me once. So I was in a very select group that never got shouted at. I'm sure he'll correct me if he hears this, but it was great, and he did so much for my polo ability in that 2 years. So I guess we've spoken a little bit about Jim and the fact that you did it at weekends and when you were able to. I mean, I don't know how it works. Are you programmed? Do you receive a gym program through the national team setup? Has that made a difference? I wonder what your feelings are on that.
Yeah, so we the gym that I kind of build my own sessions, but we also have when we do our GB camps in Manchester, we have like a qualified S&C person to kind of take us through circuits. As a goalie, it's slightly different because I'm working on quite high intensity leg work. That's quite important for me. So for me, it was like lots of squats, lots of lunges, squat holds, things like that. And I think it's always hard to know how much it correlates the sort of land fitness with the water fitness. There's always a debate over it. I think overall, just general overall leg strength and, you know, just pumping kind of blood around you, I guess, is important, and it's also good for your mental health as well. It's not even just about the water polo; it's also about
variety,
feeling like and being an athlete really.
Sean, from your experience from 2012 and operating abroad was really fascinating, and Elliot, for you to join the sport relatively late, and your level of progress and has been inspiring for hopefully a few people listening in as and when we show this to our audience. So I'd like to thank both of you tonight coming on. That was the quickest 50 minutes I can remember, actually. It was really intriguing to listen to both your stories. So thank you, Sean, and thank you, Elliot. I wish you the very best of luck in this particular period, Elliot in particular, with your sporting aspirations, but also, Sean, I wish you luck on going back to school.
Yeah. Not yet. Not
yet. So,
thank you very much. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
See ya.
See you, Sean. Bye.